Hi everyone, Clint Edmondson from Microsoft. In this screencast, we're going to continue where we left off in our sequence diagram screencast and learn how to reveal responsibilities with class diagrams. A quick reminder once again about our business context. Our client is Tailspin Toys, a small brick and mortar hobby shop that sells model airplanes, and they're looking for an online storefront to supplement in-store sales. Let's briefly discuss class diagrams. A class diagram is designed to show logical and structural aspects of the system. That is, data types used to store and exchange data and the relationships between those types. They're meant to be implementation independent. They can represent many things: language-specific software objects such as classes, interfaces, and low-level value types, XML nodes, database tables, and so on and so forth. So let's switch over to Visual Studio and see how our sequence diagrams can help us reveal class details. So here we are in Visual Studio, and I've got our basic flow sequence diagram opened up that we created in the last screencast. And the first thing we're going to need to do is create a home controller, since that's the first class that our actor interacts with. So let's start creating our static model. So if you remember from the last screencast, I've got a dynamic view with our use cases included in them. I'm going to go and create another folder, and I'm going to call that static view, and that's where we're going to hold all of our class diagrams. So let's create our first class diagram. Choose class diagram, and we will name it home controller. I'm presented with a nice clean design surface. We will switch over to toolbox, and let's go ahead and drag a class on there. We'll call it home controller. If we go over to UML Model Explorer, note that class now shows up in our design model. Let's switch back to our sequence diagram, and let's associate the home controller with the new class we just created. So if I go over to our properties, notice there's a type selector here. I will change that to our home controller. A little hard to read, but if I hover over it, you can see the Tailspin Toys design model home controller. That will put a little link in the corner that lets us know that it's associated with a class in our design model. Over in Model Explorer, let's go ahead and add a new operation, and we will call it index. And if I switch over to class diagram, you'll see that that has now shown up. Let's click on that real quick, and let's add a return type on that of action result. Spread that out a little bit. There we go. Now if we go back over to our sequence diagram, and I click on the original message we sent where the user navigated to the /home URL, notice down in our properties here we can now choose an operation. If I choose the index action result, it will show up in italics below the message line. Great thing to point out here is the top part of the message line is any kind of freeform text you want to use to describe the message. As you start getting more involved in detailed design, you can attach these messages to an actual operation on an implementation class, and it will show up on the bottom of the line. And that's editable as well if you want to change that there. Let's go down below and do the same thing for category. Notice we've got home/category. So let's add another operation. We'll call that category. Now that method has a parameter, so let's go over to our properties and choose parameters, and we'll add a new parameter. The name will be category name. The type will be string. And the return type will be action result. And once again, we'll right click on the message and we will set the operation. That looks pretty good. Let's switch over to our class diagram and make sure they've both been added. These things start to get big, so we'll give it a little more room over here. You can see these method signatures for both methods now. So now let's switch back to the sequence diagram, and I'll show you a quicker way to add these methods. So if we go up to the top here, to our product repository, I'm going to right click on that and say create an interface. What we decided to do for this model was use a little bit of dependency injection, and so we're going to use interfaces. So I'm going to define that as an interface. So converted that into an interface. Notice over in our model We now have product repository. I actually want to rename that to iProduct repository. And notice also that each of the methods that were called has been converted on the iProduct repository interface to a method. So notice there's get product categories, and then there's get products for category with a parameter category name. So the Model Explorer and the designer inferred that from our original message. So let's go ahead and give this class a name. I'm going to call this underscore product repository. I mentioned we were going to use dependency injection, so let's add a comment to describe that. We'll go to the first message and we'll say add comment. Let's say IOC DI framework be used care of instantiating the iProduct repository implementation during construction of home controller. Just a small note to let us know how we're going to go about implementing this. There we go. So let's see what creating that interface has done for us. I'm going to go to my static view and I'm going to add a new diagram. Let's do another class diagram. We'll call that products. And let's go ahead and drag our interface over from Model Explorer. Spread it out a little bit. And here we go. We've got the two operations that it's already inferred. Notice neither of these operations have return types on them yet, so we can go ahead and add those. Let's highlight that, hit F2, and that is going to return an iList of product category, which tells me I need to go ahead and design a product category class. So let's drag that on here as well. Call that product category. And that will have two public attributes, the code, which is of type string, and the name, which is also of type string. Now the second method we have here is get products for category. We'll go ahead and hit F2 on that one. We'll provide a parameter type of string and a return type. We'll call this iList product. So now we need to add a product class. So let's go ahead and drop another class on here. Call this product. And it will have a couple attributes as well. Name of type string, price of type decimal, and SKU of type string. There's also a related products property. We'll add that as well. Type iList product. And that is self-referencing. So what we're going to do is create a aggregation relationship from product to itself. And it is a 1-to star relationship. And the name of the child relationship is related products. Let's move this around a little bit. There we go, that looks pretty good. There's also a set of descriptors to describe the manufacturer details for the product. So let's add a new descriptors property. And it's an iList of product descriptor. So there's another class we need. So we will come down here and add product descriptor. And we will add a composition relationship. And this will be a 1-star as well. And the attributes for that our title, body. So I think that covers our basic flow. Let's go ahead and open up our subflow S1 and do the same thing we did before. So home controller, we're going to convert that to a type. We need another method here for product, so let's go to the home controller, add an operation, we'll call that product. We can add the parameters. In this case, the parameter is a SKU of type string, and the return value again is an action result. Street MVC framework. We will go to the message, change that action there. So that should have updated the home controller with all three methods. There we go. Same thing with the product repository. I want to change the type on that to our interface. So let me see if I can find that in here. iProduct repository. I'm going to give it a name, underscore product. I'm going to leave off the note since that's already captured in the basic flow, which is the primary sequence for this use case anyway. Notice we've also got a couple of the classes we can discover here. Details.aspx. If we go back to our basic flow, we have home, ASPX, and listing. Let's just go ahead and convert those to a class as well. Notice it created an empty message. We can delete that. We can leave it. I'm going to delete it so it doesn't look so goofy. We will create that as well. Go to S1 and do the same thing for details. Create a class. So that gave us a couple more classes over here. Listing.aspx, details, and home.aspx. Now I want to capture in our home controller diagram the relationship between the controller and those pages. So let's go ahead and drag those on here. So the first one was home.aspx. Go ahead and delete that method off. Let's collapse that. Then comes listing. And then comes the details.aspx. And what I want to capture here is really just the fact that there's a dependency between these two. So let's go over to our design tools and just capture that dependency. Spread it out so it looks a little more even. A couple more things we want to add to that class while we're at it. So let's go ahead and add the underscore product repository of type iProduct repository. And that is going to be private. So we'll set the visibility to private on that. While we're at it, we will also add a constructor for home controller. And that will take a product repository, type iProduct repository. And we can add an additional comment here as well about the dependency injection, just so we're clear. So let's right click and say add comment. And we'll say IOC DI framework will handle repository instantiation via DI during construction. And I think with that, we've captured most of the design details we need to implement both the basic flow for UC1 and the subflow. So let's switch back to the slide deck for some closing tips. Always remember, a diagram should focus on one aspect of the system's design. In domain-driven design terms, this is called a bounded context. You should strive to organize your elements spatially to emphasize their relationships. I spend a lot of time laying out my diagrams visually so that at a quick glance you can understand all the relationships between the elements. And always remember, this is iterative and incremental. The public behaviors and relationships that I've discovered during this screencast emerge naturally from the sequence diagrams, and I flip between diagrams quite frequently. And only add internal and private details as necessary to address implementation problems. And remember, design is about solving problems. Model only what you need to solve a problem and communicate that solution to others. Anything more and you're just writing documentation. Here are some references for you. UML2 in the unified process, elements of UML2 style, and use case-driven object modeling with UML. Resources, as always, this screencast series was done using Visual Studio 2010 Ultimate. You can download the trial edition here. The Visual Studio Architecture Team's blog is also listed here, and you can visit my blog to download these materials. Thanks for tuning in.